It's Anal Cancer Awareness Day. We are so happy you're here. My name is Justine Almada, and I am the Executive Director and co-founder of the Anal Cancer Foundation. My siblings and I founded ACF after losing our mom to stage 4 HPV-related anal cancer, so no family would ever have to go through anal cancer alone again. ACF exists to end anal cancer and improve the lives of those affected by it. We are here for you to listen, to provide patient-driven resources for people in the trenches, and to help you on your journey in whatever way we can. In addition to advocacy and research, we serve 1,000 patients a year through webinars, our annual patient conference, our anal cancer and reset side effect guides, and our peer-to-peer support program. We believe we can end diagnoses and deaths from anal cancer, and we are acting in Congress and at the White House to demand screening guidelines to catch anal precancer before it turns into cancer. When ACF advocates, we share the real-life stories of thrivers like you. And that's why we're here today, because anal cancer stories matter. Your story matters. Our topic today is Voices of Resilience, Personal Journeys and Self-Advocacy in Anal Cancer. Building community is foundational to having a better experience. Sharing what happened to us, not having to go through what others have, knowing that you are not alone, learning what others have learned, all makes our community stronger. It is a groundbreaking act when we tell our story. And I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Molly, Doug, Charmaine, Chris, and Brian for sharing their stories today. I also want to thank our sponsors, the Farrah Fawcett Foundation, and our partners, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the International Anal Neoplasia Society, and HPV Cancer Alliance. We are honored to have our panel today moderated by a thriver, Molly. Molly lives with her family in Vermont. She is actively working and has a long career advancing healthcare advocacy and policy initiatives. Molly loves playing tennis, skiing, gardening, traveling, and going to the beach. With that, let's get started. Molly, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise today. I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Justine. I really appreciate it. As she said, I'm Molly Williams. I am thrilled to be here. Well, I don't know if I'm thrilled to be here. I really wish I didn't have anal cancer, but I do. And I'm I feel like very fortunate to have found the Anal Cancer Foundation. We have 3 panels today. We have 4 people, and I will introduce them. Our first panelist will be Doug. Doug splits his time between Los Angeles and New York. He's a retired travelogue filmmaker. His passions are traveling the world and Broadway theater. Our second panelist is Charmaine. She devotes her time and energy trying to perfect the art of teaching children the joy of mathematics. When she's not doing that, she is puzzling, reading, connecting to nature through outdoor adventure, cooking, and trying to get fit. And lastly, we have Brian and Chris. Brian is a physical therapist, retired from the United States Navy, but still works mostly enjoying vestibular and concussed patients. He is a stage 3A survivor. Christine is Brian's wife, also a physical therapist practicing pediatrics. Chris and Brian have 2 children, a 20-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son. Both Chris and Brian mostly enjoy the time spent with their children and extended family. Again, we're going to go right into our panelists. And once we hear from all 3 panels, then we will open it up to some questions. And hopefully you will be able to ask us all. I will also tell my story, excuse me, and hopefully you'll be able to ask us some questions. The point of this is really to share our journeys, to share information about our personal experiences, and hopefully provide some connection with all of you who have joined us today. So I'm going to hand this over to Doug. Hopefully. Oh, Doug, you need to unmute.
All right. Am I ready to go? My name is Doug Jones. I'm in Los Angeles right now, so it's still morning. I am a 5-year anal cancer thriver, and let me tell you my story. On January the 5th of 2019, I was on board the Queen Mary 2, a transatlantic ocean liner, sailing across the North Atlantic bound for London for my annual London theater trip. While I was taking a shower in my cabin, I could feel a small growth just inside my anus. I did not feel like a hemorrhoid. I put worry aside and continued my journey, but once I got off of the ship in Southampton, I emailed my doctor in California and asked for an appointment when I got back to Los Angeles. I returned at the end of January in 2019. I went into her office a few days later. She looked at the growth and she said, "No worries, it's just a hemorrhoid." Obviously, I was relieved. But 6 weeks later, I could still feel the growth, and I thought, this is hard. Hemorrhoids are squishy. I made another appointment and went back to see her. She looked again, and this time she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. This is not a hemorrhoid." A biopsy was done. It was squamous cell anal cancer in its earliest stages, which of course was good. I went on the NIGRO protocol, which involved 6 weeks of radiation and chemo. First 2 weeks were easy. The second, I've continued my life with really no changes. The next 2 weeks, starting to feel a little lousy. The last 2 weeks, I will admit, were among the most intense of my life. But while this was going on, I kept reminding myself that this is time limited. I had a calendar where I marked off every day and put up exactly how many days to go before it was over. In the end, I felt wiped out. It took another 2 weeks to start feeling better. But then I started improving rapidly, and my life returned more or less to normal in a fairly short period of time. This month marks my 5-year anniversary. I remain cancer free, and I'm living a rich and full life filled with theater, travel, and cherished friends. I think back on the course of treatment, and while I will not minimize how rough the last 2 weeks were, I think 2 miserable weeks of my life in exchange for more time on the planet was a worthwhile investment. I did not seek a second opinion. Cancer is cancer. No second opinion will change that. I do wish that I'd sought a second opinion about the course of treatment. My tumor was very small, less than 2 centimeters. There was no metastasizing, yet I was given the same full treatment that a stage 3 anal cancer patient would receive. Unfortunately, I am with an HMO in Los Angeles, and a second opinion on treatment would have really revealed nothing because the small team in oncology would have stood with each other. If I had PPO insurance, I think I would have sought a second opinion regarding the treatment protocol. I have often felt that I could have been cancer free with less radiation and less chemo, given the small nature of the tumor. The reason I bring this up is that most people who do go through the full NIGRO protocol of 6 weeks of radiation and chemo will likely have some incontinence issues. That said, my issues with incontinence have improved and today present only occasional problems. And it is my understanding that some doctors are starting to consider lowering the amounts of radiation and chemo for patients with stage 1 tumors. One mistake that I regret was that I tried to do it alone. My husband, John, had died a few years before I encountered this. I have no immediate family in Los Angeles. I pride myself on being independent and not needing to call on others for help. But if I had to do it over, I would call on my friends and let them help me with simple tasks like grocery shopping, getting to the treatment appointments in the last 2 weeks, helping me make dinner, helping me with my laundry. My friends would have helped, and I should have asked for their help. If there's one final thought that I have, it is this: the person in charge of your health is you. All of your doctors, specialists, and medical advisors may have your best interests at heart, but in the end, you are in charge of your health. Educate yourself, ask questions, research carefully and cautiously online, and know your body so that you can be involved in making the decisions that will improve and lengthen your life.
Thank you, Doug. Charmaine is going to be our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Charmaine. In the summer of 2021, my associations with all things that were good, that started with the letter C, such as coffee, croissant, chocolate, cake, took a downward dive. The C words that had now come into my life were cancer, chemo, capecitabine, cortisone cream. I've been diagnosed with stage 1 anal cancer. Cancer is a really frightening C word. Now, instead of summer being lazy days spent at the beach, summer became doctor's appointments, scans, chemo, and radiation. Through this experience, I have learned some things, though. Listening to my body, to feel that what I was going through was not normal, and to persist in getting answers, even though it was slightly embarrassing. I had experienced pain and discomfort for weeks and months, and maybe even years, long enough that I don't even remember how long. One of my mantras became, "This is not embarrassing. This is what's happening to me now." In the months leading up to seeing a doctor, I found myself regularly being awakened in the middle of the night by urgent signals to empty my bowels. And when I went to the bathroom, I cried because I was in so much pain. These pains were worse than even labor and delivery, and I've given birth to 3 children by natural childbirth. I just didn't understand why, with a diet of oatmeal and salad and beans, why my hemorrhoids were not improving. I was exercising daily, eating healthy foods, and still I thought that I was going to die every time I went to the bathroom. Finally, I was in so much pain that I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with cancer. I had scans, lab work, doctor's appointments, then more scans, more lab work, and more doctor's appointments. Finally, chemoradiation therapy was recommended. I was on summer vacation when the treatment began, and it ended right before the new academic year began in the fall. So I applied for a leave of absence to postpone my teaching responsibilities for several weeks in the autumn. I thought that I would need time off from work. Now it was time to find someone to accompany me to radiation, which was 5 days per week for 6 weeks. I thought about how I was going to get to my appointments. Should I drive, arrange someone to drive me, take the subway? I ultimately decided that being in a car in New York City traffic would be a more anxiety-producing event than just taking the subway and reading my book. I thought that the physical requirements of going up and down stairs and of walking to and from the medical buildings would force me to be more physically active than I would have otherwise been that summer. Other preparations before treatment started included the rearrangement of furniture in my bedroom and bathroom so that the space was clear and unobstructed. I also prepared some comfort foods and stocked the house with treats to eat for the times ahead when I knew I wouldn't want to eat. I stocked up on all the C's that I like: chocolates, cakes, cookies, croissants. I pre-made meals and soups to freeze for those times when I knew I wouldn't have the energy to cook. I made a list of movies to watch and books to read that would distract me. I remember so clearly during my last radiation visit, lying on the radiation table, that if it hadn't been my last session, I would never have been able to come back the following week. Certainly not by subway. I didn't have the strength. I wondered to myself whether my doctors actually knew that from research, and that's why they had picked 6 weeks. I couldn't physically, mentally, or emotionally endure anymore. I had had enough. But it was my last day. I made it. When treatment was over, I rethought my leave of absence, and decided that it would be better if I had some classes to teach, had a reason to leave the house, and most importantly, had something else to think about. I arranged to postpone the start of some of my classes while starting others on that first day of the semester. In retrospect, it was a really great idea to go back to work that I really enjoyed doing. It would give me better things to think about. I got out of bed, went into school to be with some of my students on their first day of school. What could be better than being with kids on their first day of school with all of their thoughts of what they were going to accomplish that year? Since that summer, I have been trying to get back to being fit and healthy. Between COVID and cancer, my physical fitness has never been worse, but I'm determined to get back into shape. I've been on that road to recovery with its ups and downs, but on the whole, things are improving yearly. Going through everything these last 4 years have taught me to be in the present and to try to make each day count. Thank you.
Brian and Chris, you're next.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if you can see us or not, but I'm Brian Boston. This is my wife, Chris. And in early 2019, I went in for a regular scope of the colon and was told everything was perfect. See you in 10 years. By August of that year, I began experiencing severe pain, bleeding, and weight loss. Classic symptoms. A trip to my regular PCM, lab work, PSA, all fine. Asked for a referral to general surgery. General surgery didn't really perform an examination, just said, oh, you probably have hemorrhoids. Here's some cream, see you later. December of that year, finally got so bad where we begged and pleaded and finally got into the general surgeon. And that was December 10th of 2019. I woke up the following morning as an inpatient, unaware that they had taken some biopsies and a CT scan was ordered. 2-week follow-up, we got the diagnosis of anal cancer, squamous cell anal cancer, and it shocked our world. We found ourselves immediately being transported to a different hospital and to a specialist who met with us that day. Gave us the weekend to go home and get our affairs in order for the long road ahead, and was back in the hospital the following Monday. On January 1st, 2020, I had what was supposed to be a temporary colostomy. And like many others who've gone through the 6-week radiation and chemo treatment, it's left me with some scarring. So that colostomy has now turned into a permanent colostomy. However, like all thrivers and survivors, it's a small price to pay for being alive. And I'm glad that I'm there. My wife, Chris, was the rock throughout this process. That Friday afternoon, December 27th of 2019, when we got the diagnosis, we immediately circled friends and family. And it was this woman who was there with me every step of the way. Loaded for bear with a list of questions, research that she had done, and talked to the surgeon and the care team, the medical oncologist, the radiation oncologist, and never let a question not get answered. Our advice is that you have to fend for yourselves in our healthcare system. You have to go in demanding more than just the standard of care if you think is something that's going wrong. And then have somebody with you as well that can be your support. My father-in-law took me to radiation. My mother-in-law kept us fed and the house clean, while Chris kept working and keeping our family moving forward. Have a support network. Use a support network. And if you're like us, hit your knees and pray hard. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. And now it's my turn to share my story. So just quickly, mine started in the summer of 2022. I remember feeling discomfort when I was riding the Peloton, and I chalked it up to what I thought was probably a hemorrhoid, even though I'd never had them. I decided to take a break from the Peloton and focus on tennis. A month or so later, I was in DC with my daughter. I started to have some bleeding when I went to the bathroom. Again, chalked it up to normal changes in life. I was 52, perimenopausal, decided to eat more fiber and use over-the-counter remedies. By November, I started to worry, and I went to see my PCP, who confirmed hemorrhoids. I was relieved, of course, but the bleeding continued. So I reached out to the gastroenterology practice where I had my colonoscopy 2 years prior. That was clear, and I wasn't scheduled to go back for 10 years. Sounds familiar. And get an appointment with an expert. Long story short, I saw a physician assistant there, and she did an exam, and again, hemorrhoids. She gave me a prescription for a suppository. I followed her directions, used the medicine. It did nothing to stop the bleeding. At this time, my husband and I were planning to be out of our house for over a month and a half because we were having all 3 of our bathrooms completely renovated. We had quite a fun schedule of working from a few different places, and I was fully consumed as the general contractor. It was now getting towards May of last year, and the bleeding was much worse. In hindsight, I also remember starting to feel discomfort sitting. So I went back to the physician assistant at the gastro practice, and she told me now I had a fissure and prescribed a topical ointment, which of course did not work. I had an allergic reaction to it, had full body hives. I called her and I told her I was seriously concerned, and she grudgingly ordered a colonoscopy for that Friday. It was June 9th, 2023. The gastroenterologist brought my husband into the recovery room after my colonoscopy and told me I had anal cancer. His one line was, "I don't think you will need palliative care." This was at 4 o'clock on a Friday. We drove home shocked. But in the back of my head, I think I knew this would be the case. After a few bizarre interactions with the local doctors, I called a major cancer center in New York, and within 2 weeks of my initial diagnosis, I was seen. At first, they thought I had stage 2 cancer, and I was all set to start chemoradiation, but one last MRI showed it had metastasized to my liver, spine, and lymph nodes. I was stage 4. I started chemo in New York City on July 26th. My husband made arrangements for us to stay at the Four Seasons. It was lovely. But chemo in New York City is not easy. I live 4 hours away in Vermont. Thankfully, I was able to move my care to Dartmouth-Hitchcock, which is still almost a 2-hour drive. I went every 2 weeks until this January, and chemo is mean. And while at first it worked, my body couldn't handle the regimen. So we switched to immunotherapy, and I will know more in April how it is working. I have been working this entire time, and it has been a huge blessing. I've stayed active, and I've tried to keep my schedule as normal as possible. I was lucky and did not lose my hair, though it did thin considerably. Most people seemed amazed that I'm going through treatment. Lately, things have been a bit rough. The immunotherapy affected my thyroid, and the side effects of that have limited my physical activity. But I'm hoping that will be resolved soon. So I travel a lot for work, which I love, and I can't wait to get back out on the golf course, which is my new hobby. So that is my story. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to ask the panelists to come back on, and I have a few questions for each one, and then we're going to get to some questions from the audience, if that works. Great. Everybody's microphones are back on. I think, yes, excellent. Okay. So my first question is for Doug. Doug, you mentioned incontinence, and it's a huge issue for our community and keeps folks from what they have in common with you, a love of travel. You noted, luckily, you only have minor issues. That being said, when issues could potentially occur, how do you prepare for your travels to help stave off any incidents?
Well, that's a pretty personal question. I will admit. I guess there's no too much information on this
Nope.
webinar. So I have developed habits. One thing that I've always been an independent traveler. I traveled for a living. there are places I would like to go that really require group travel. I have chosen not to do that because of these issues. I've learned my own body pretty well. And to give you an example, I'm an avid theater enthusiast. In fact, I'm leaving for New York in a couple of weeks for the spring Broadway season. Because of the work that I did, I always, because I was on stage every night, I got in the habit of eating dinner after my work, which was usually 10:30 or 11 o'clock. If I go to the theater, I do not eat before the show. I do wear protection, even though I may not need it. I eat afterwards. I find in my personal experience that eating 2 hours later can activate a problem. So my favorite thing to do in the world, which is the 3-hour lunch, I'm very careful about, and I do it less. But I do eat my dinner late, and I do not, I'm very careful about when I eat, thinking ahead to what situation I'm going to be in. And it took me, I will admit, it took me a long time to be able to accept wearing protection. But I do, and I don't do it all the time. I just do it when I think I'm going to be in a situation where it would be useful if a problem occurred.
Thank you. And thank you for your frankness. I appreciate it. Then next question I'm going to ask is to Charmaine. And I also feel this way, but being active is very important to some people. It is to me, and it's hard to get back in. Do you have any advice for people who are trying to get back to the same level of previous activity, but are finding it difficult because of the treatment after effects?
It's been it's been up and down. And the year after my cancer was diagnosed, so actually it was the summer of 2022, I was back to getting fit and planning my summer, and I was doing some spring cleaning in the yard, and I was lugging some bags of dirt, and I did something to myself. As it turns out, I fractured my sacrum, and there was weakness in the bone, in the pelvic bone. And I guess I might have been aware of that initially, the first year when I was going through treatment, but I just forgotten about it, by that a year later. And so that set me back. And I think that the moral of the story is that you always have to start slowly and build back slowly. You just got to go a little bit at a time, so I have been dealing with minor injuries all along the way, where I get enthusiastic, then I get over enthusiastic, and I injure myself, and then I have to kind of roll it back and start again. So I guess the best thing to do is just to just keep at it and to build back slowly.
That's great advice. Yes. I actually rode the Peloton for 15 minutes today, and I don't like riding the Peloton. So I was very proud of myself. So thank you. And for Brian and Chris, how did you find the strength to share your story with your circle as widely as you did? Many people have supportive friends and family, but they still deal with stigma from this disease. Can you talk a little bit about your journey on that?
Sure. I think that we didn't hold any punches when it came to our close circle of friends and family. And yes, while there still is some stigma associated with anal cancer, it's cancer. And, it's no different than breast cancer or,
cervical cancer.
Yeah.
We just, I was running my own private practice at the time. Brian had just changed, 6 months prior, changed to another company, and he was getting them out of the red and into the black for the first time ever. So we were both working like crazy, and we had 2 high schoolers. So there was a long list of things we needed. And there were a lot of people who would call and say, hey, you know, if there's anything we can do, let us know. And I didn't really know how to answer that question. And I didn't want people everywhere. We had a lot of things going on. Brian needed to get to treatment. I needed to be at appointments with him. I needed to run that train. And I had a practice, and I had patients and their family. And all of my patients are little tiny, really sick kids. And at the same time, trying to encourage their parents and teach them how to introduce their children to the world. It was a lot. So I sat down and I wrote a list of the things that I needed. And then I thought of the people in our circle who could help us. And I called them and I said, I need this specifically. And people dropped and came. But I think in the beginning, it was difficult for Brian to, I guess, vocalize it was anal cancer. It was just cancer at the time. And I think as time goes by, it's been easier to say it. I think because of the stigma, but I think that's just for the people that aren't in the circle. You know, the people, everyone here, it's like, who cares? We're just trying to fight this damn thing and live. So we don't care anymore. You just fight.
Yeah, you do. Well, that leads me to the next question I wanted to ask you guys, and this is for everybody. You can answer this. How do you incorporate humor into your cancer journey? You know, and has it been a source of strength or a coping mechanism for you? I do. I mean, even just talking to my own mother, you know, she kept calling my cancer rectal cancer. I'm like, no, Mom, it is anal cancer. She does not like that word. She is 79 years old. I think she's finally done it. But, you know, I said some inappropriate things to her, and that kind of, you know, lightened the mood a little bit. Is there anything that you would recommend, or any kind of funny story that you've had that you would be willing to share in this space? Not trying to diminish what we're talking about, but.
Well, I told everybody I'd never be the same a-hole again, so.
I struggled with my mom, who's, I think, early stages dementia, and she, like you, Brian, could not sit down. I mean, there was a point where Brian was begging God to take him. All the while, you know, our daughter was running cross country and doing really well, and God love him, Brian would get into the truck and drive 4 hours to her next meet. But my mom, every other time he'd be standing, walking all day long. And my parents were living with us completely submersed and trying to help us get through life. My mom said, oh, Brian, here's a spot for you. Why don't you come sit down? And I got so sick and tired of hearing that. I'm like, Mom, he has a tumor growing out of his ass. It wasn't meant to be humorous. It was just like, how many fucking times do we have to tell you it's not working? Sorry for my language, but you know, it was rough. But I think we just laugh about it now because we're on the other side. But you know, everybody doesn't want to say it's over, you know, even though we're now 4 years out, no one wants to say we're done. So we just keep pushing.
Charmaine or Doug, do you have anything to offer?
I haven't really, I've been, I guess I'm still dealing with that myself. You know, trying to be more, outgoing about it and trying to figure out when I can share that I have, gotten anal cancer. And so it's not an issue that I have dealt with well in my experience. I think that I'm just not very good at it. You know, I have some of my own privacy issues with it. So I think that within close circles of friends, of course, but in a larger audience, say in a workplace, it's, I certainly wouldn't have any issues with sharing it, because I think that if I can pass on information to help people get treatment or seen earlier, then it's certainly worthwhile to do that, of course. So whenever I hear anybody mention some issues that might be similar to what I experienced, then I would certainly give all the information that I have. But it is definitely an issue that I'm currently still dealing with.
I tend to call it HPV cancer, especially in the work environment. Kind of keeps it a little bit, generic for me, and I feel comfortable that way. I don't know, Doug, if there's any story you have to tell too.
Well, I went to the hospital enough that I started referring to it as the vacation condo. Um, it's interesting that the problem with this is one word, and that word is anal. And the general public is still uncomfortable with that word. And I will even admit that I have been known to tell people that I had rectal cancer because the word is an easier word to use. And how we get by this stigma, I don't have the answers for it, but being open about it is helpful. One of my personal passions for which I have no real way to activate it is to get people to do self-examination. Because like breast cancer, if people would just do self-examination occasionally in the shower, a lot of this would be discovered. And there recently was a study that was put out that defined how doctors were supposed to address the potential for anal cancer. I read it, and I have to tell you, I was shocked at their unwillingness to look at the obvious questions the doctors should be asking.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the problem. We've gotten a couple questions from the audience, and one of them is, how do I get back to my old self? I'm not there yet. I'm not even near getting back to my old self. I got a long journey ahead of me, but I'm curious. All three of you are on the other side. Do you feel like you're back to you're getting closer to your normal self, or is there a new normal, or how do you focus on moving forward and kind of putting the cancer, no pun intended, behind you? Charmaine, do you want to go first?
Well, I think that due to the radiation treatment, I have dealt with leakage and incontinence issues, and I do regular Kegel exercises on a daily basis, and I find that helps me ward off deal with those issues. It really is extremely helpful. In terms of gaining fitness, I was in really good shape before the pre-pandemic and pre-cancer. And it has been very difficult to claw my way back to fitness. So, I just have to be extremely persistent, because I'm not really willing to live with my level of fitness. And it's, so I'm just trying everything that I can possibly, figure out to do to just get back to life pre-cancer.
Brian and Chris, why don't we have you go next?
To be honest, I think I'm living now with a new personal standard, and it's not where it was pre-cancer. Certainly there's complications that went on. Obviously, I shared that I now have a permanent colostomy, so deal with that. Like many others, I had lymphedema, and certainly have polyneuropathy in my feet, and unfortunately my hands as well. Don't have the stamina that I used to have. Certainly it's gotten better as the years have gone on. I went back to work half days and would literally go out to my truck and take a nap for an hour before I even tried to drive home. That's changed. I'm back to working full time, but it's every day is a new day. Every day is with another group that we are part of, a chance to be just 1% better. That's all I can do is take it day by day.
That's wonderful. Okay.
Every person watching this and every person on this panel, their experience is different. This is a very individualized cancer, depending on when you were diagnosed, the treatment you received. For myself, I was fortunate that I did have stage 1, and I would say that I have adapted to a new normal. I do everything I did before. Every single passion and activity I do, but I am continuously aware of mostly my eating habits. And probably like many people here, I don't go anywhere without knowing where the bathroom is. And I've learned to adjust to this. I continue to go to the theater and the opera and to do all of the things that I love to do, but I am constantly in the back of my mind aware of this side effect from the result of my treatment. But as I have said, I've learned I've learned my body, and I've learned to work around it. And occasionally I have problems, I will admit it, but they're pretty occasional. And for being able to live my life as I always lived it, I can accept it. I can deal with it.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think for me, it's about the day to day. Just every day is another day. I will get through this. I really value the fact that I do get to work full time because it keeps me from having to, I love to work. I love my job. I love the people I work with. It's very gratifying, and it keeps my mind busy. So, and even I have kids, I've got all this stuff going on too. So it's just, it's nice to just always have something to look forward to. So that's kind of my thought in this. Some of the other questions we're getting, somebody had asked me a question on here about how I went to immunotherapy. My physician is following the NCCN guidelines. So, obviously I'm not a medical professional, but if anybody has questions about that, the foundation we can take those questions offline and answer them for you. But, we have a little bit of time left, and I do want to kind of focus a little bit on what resources or support systems you might have used that we have not mentioned yet. Are there any resources that you want to share with the group moving forward, just to provide some, ideas for folks who may not know where they could find additional resources outside of the Anal Cancer Foundation? I know Brian and Chris, were there any other resources that you found helpful during this whole journey that you want to share?
I think because of our education, we're both physical therapists. So research is where we live when you talk treatment about anything. So I went straight to sources that we use all the time, PubMed, NIH, our own professional organization, because Brian, from all the radiation, when he gets, he's internally a burn patient. So burn tissue constricts, tightens down. So if he's not moving, he's like a sloth when he just goes to try to put his socks on or shoes on or whatever. And he was on a 3-month surgical rotation to get strictures scraped. And that increased to 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And now, we're now on an annual schedule, but, everything that came up, you know, I would specifically search in PubMed, NIH, the APTA, and, you know, certainly go for specific foundations, but I wanted a global view. I didn't want to get too specific. And when Brian did have a peristomal hernia with the first temporary stoma, I dug deep into hernia repairs. So I wouldn't have been able to find that, you know, in Anal Cancer Foundation. I had to look broad. So once I was able to find something, then I could hone in on specific articles. But I think if you start broad and then you can narrow it down. But I always start at PubMed or NIH. And
great resources.
yes, and then you can really take a deep dive from there. But with his hernia repair and the move to a permanent colostomy stoma, then I went to his colorectal surgeon, which he now knows me well, that I come with my phone full of questions, and you're going to park your butt in the chair and we're going to chat. And we discussed all the different hernia repairs, and he called in representatives from different companies to join him in Brian's surgery. And they discussed, and he had a special hernia repair surgeon come in, and they did it together. But you have to dig. You have to dig. You've got to advocate for yourself, or your family member. I think we wrote in our tip sheet or video that we put together, I don't know, you have to drive this train. Providers, including us, we have a limited time with our patients. So like when we go in to see a patient, we know exactly what we're treating and move on. But you've got to stop them, slow them down, and tell them where this train's going to go. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. We only have about 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure, I don't know, Charmaine or Doug, are there any resources that you wanted to share?
I just noticed on the question board, someone asked whether any of us had the HPV vaccine post treatment, and initially my HMO would not do it, and then suddenly they turned around and decided that they asked me if I wanted it, and so I did take it. Whether it has value is questionable, but I felt that there was no downside risk to taking it. So in my case, I did have the HPV vaccine post-treatment.
No, thanks. Charmaine?
I haven't, I don't really have any resources to recommend. There have been a slew of resources that have been, I received my care at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, and through that institution, there are many support services that they offer, including regular webinars that they offer all of us survivors, as well as other forms of support networks. And so anyway, they're out there. I just don't have the names of any at the tip of my tongue.
Yep.
So I apologize.
No, that's fine. You can see in the chat that a lot of people are talking about Facebook groups. There is the anal cancer support group, and then there's also another one that I found for stage 4 anal cancer. It's a small group. It's very helpful. Sometimes I have to stay away from it though. Sometimes it gets a little bit too much for me, and I kind of check in, check out. But given the nature of this cancer and how rare it is, there's no, this isn't breast cancer. There's no, at your local cancer center, they don't have an anal cancer, support group. They have, so you have to kind of find your community. And thankfully, as much as I loathe social media, it is wonderful for bringing people together in that kind of a, controlled environment. And I think for me, that's been one of the most helpful. The other thing is the National Cancer Centers, the NCCN guidelines. I use those all the time. I look to them because of my treatment. They're changing. Hopefully we're going to see more treatments for folks, especially for folks in my case. And hopefully Doug's, we'll see other, recommendations made so that we are not seeing people getting, perhaps unnecessarily, treatments that may be a little bit over, they're kind of looking to change all of that stuff. So that's another resource. I'm just gonna look at this, look at who else has talked here. And that is really interesting about the HPV vaccine. Someone asked me if I was vaccinated prior to getting diagnosed. I said, no, I'm 54 years old. They did not have that vaccine when I was younger. My children, however, are vaccinated. And I make sure to, that's the one thing that I do is talk a lot about, get your kids vaccinated. So where are we at time? We are right at time. I am going to let people know, yes, this has been recorded. I believe it will be made public. I'm going to change to kind of close down the session. I'm going to say thank you to Doug, Charmaine, Brian, Chris. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Justine for some final comments. But again, it is Anal Cancer Awareness Day. And if we want to call it Ask Cancer Awareness Day, that is fine too. But hopefully we will be able to bring some sense of eliminating stigma and support to the community. So thank you.
Thank you
Oh.
so much, Molly. Thank you so much. Before we conclude, I'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Molly, Doug, Charmaine, Brian, and Chris for their courage, openness, and invaluable insight shared today. Your stories have truly lifted up the journey of living with anal cancer, and your advocacy is a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. I also want to thank each and every one of you in our audience for joining us today and sharing your questions and stories. Remember, your voice matters, and your experiences are a vital part of our collective effort to raise awareness and empower those affected by anal cancer. Thank you again to the Farrah Fawcett Foundation, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the International Anal Neoplasia Society, and HPV Cancers Alliance. A few final thoughts on what you can do as your own personal advocate. And I think we should be getting a PowerPoint slide up now. Speak up, educate yourself, and ask questions, even if that means asking them twice or 3 times to your doctor. Listen to and trust your body. Remain persistent, even if you're dismissed. Call on your community, your friends, your family, your belief system, us, the anal cancer community. We've been holding this event on Anal Cancer Awareness Day, a global day of action to raise awareness of anal cancer. You can keep fighting for anal cancer by sharing knowledge with your doctor that will help future anal cancer thrivers. Email us at info@analcancerfoundation.org for the list. You can sign up for our free peer-to-peer support program to give or seek membership for someone else who is newly diagnosed or 10 years out. And the program is also open for caregivers. You can share your story on our Thriver Stories page and let us know if you'd like to become a speaker like the panelists today. Finally, please join us at upcoming webinars this spring and our annual patient summit held in the fall. We have lots of resources on our website and YouTube channel with a real focus on side effect management after treatment, as well as information on clinical trials and immunotherapies that really cover everything from new diagnosis to side effect management. Thank you again to our panelists, our audience, and everyone involved in making today's webinar possible. The special thank you to Laura, who is behind the scenes making this all happen. Thrive on and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.